Mr. Ambassador, thank you for this interview.
Thank you for having me.
The US elections has drawn the attention of the public in the world, including in Macedonia.
Yeah.
However, very few know what the voting process tomorrow is about, and what is in the ballot, and what the whole process is going to look like. So would you like explaining the process of election to our viewers, please?
Sure. American elections are, as you said, pretty complicated affairs. They're also very big affairs. Tomorrow, there will be about a total of 130 million votes cast at more than 200,000 polling stations across the country, across 4 time zones. What you really have going on, though, is you have 53 separate elections. In the United States, the states control the elections. And so in the presidential election, the candidates are running in the state. Whoever wins the most votes in that state gets the electoral votes of that state. And so they will be competing for electoral votes, not popular votes, at the end of the day. They'll need 270 to win. But there are also a lot of other things going on Election Day besides President of the United States. Every single member of Congress will be running for re-election, as they do every 2 years. That's 435 congressmen will be elected. 34 senators will be elected as well. So I brought with me my ballot here from the state of Maryland that has those races, but then there are a lot more things on the ballot.
Wow.
There are local issues, from statewide initiatives on amendments to the state's constitution, to the election or the recertification of judges, to members of the local school board. So Americans will be voting for all those things. So it's a big process. You'll start seeing returns come in, the results of the election, from the East Coast coming in about midnight, Macedonia's time, up to ballots closing in California around 5 a.m. Macedonia time. So that will be the process that you'll see unfolding. So it's a big, complicated process.
Yes, it's not just the presidential
not just the
elections that
president.
Everybody just talks about.
That's right.
Polls show uncertainty till the last moment. The campaign has been rough, and the competitors do not choose means. How is this campaign different from those in the past?
Well, I've been following elections really since I was about 16 years old, and the first presidential election I followed closely was 1976. And the basic model of the campaign has stayed pretty similar then, where you have the period where parties are in primaries. That lasts from, say, during the election year, that lasts from January through June. You then get state conventions, and then about September, you get the general election campaign kicks in. That basic rhythm has remained the same. The Electoral College has remained the same. There are a lot of things that have remained the same in elections. I think there have been some changes in how we vote, certainly in how we vote. Many Americans now will be voting before the election. I voted as a non-resident right now before the election, but even people who are in the States have the option to vote before Election Day on Tuesday. So by tomorrow morning, 50 million people will have already voted. That's what estimates say. You'll also see, I think the other big area where there's been a lot of change in how elections are conducted, and also the campaigns, if you will, are consumed, is in the media environment.
So what was the role of the media in this US election process?
Well, the media has always been a huge part of the election process, dating back to our first elections in the 19th century. I'd say the big change for the media became when television came in 1960, when the candidates came directly to the people in their living rooms, can talk to them directly. That whole trend has continued. You got the advent of cable television, so you now have lots of stations, lots of different kinds of programs candidates appear on to target different segments of the audience. And now you have social media, which even makes that targeting, that ability to speak directly to a voter, you know, right there on their cell phone, and get their messages out directly to the voter. That's another big change. That has also created an environment, I think, where people tend to see often different news. We're not all watching the same newscast on the evening news as we were, say, maybe in 1976. So that media environment is constant. It used to be you'd watch the evening news and you'd read the morning paper. That was it. Now the news is constantly coming at you. You can have it whenever you want it. And so there's this feeling, I think many voters feel like there's this barrage of information. I think it's also challenged voters to be more careful in their news. There's a lot of news out there. There's a lot of information out there. There's also a lot of things that just simply aren't true out there. So you have to be discerning in what you view, and also use fact-checking sites and so forth to verify whether some of these claims are true, because a claim can go out on social media instantaneously, and it's very hard then to put it back in the box.
Yeah, lots of things like that happened. The campaign, considering the campaign was very sharp, is it possible that any of the runners do not concede?
Well, that would be certainly a break with the tradition in the United States. You know, we've had rough campaigns, very rough campaigns, ever since the beginning of our republic. Maybe the roughest was in 1800 between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, people we consider grand founders of the United States. They engaged in a very bitter, nasty campaign. That's continued throughout our campaigns. Sometimes they're very close. We've had close elections. There's nothing new about that either. And it's, you know, so I think the key point is we've always had the tradition, though, that when the election's over, the winner is decided, the loser congratulates the winner, that reaffirms our democracy, and we move on. Politics, of course, doesn't stop. It moves to a different venue. And so in 1860, when the United States was at the brink of civil war and had a very partisan, very bitter campaign that Abraham Lincoln won. He beat a senator named Stephen Douglas. And Douglas said, partisan feeling must yield to patriotism now. That is the same phrase that Al Gore said when he conceded the 2000 election, which, if you recall, went down to counting 500 ballots in the state of Florida, and then the Supreme Court ruling that that count was legitimate. That's how the election got decided. So I think that's an important tradition, and I can't speak obviously for what any candidate will do, but I think that's what many people want.
Depending on the election outcome, can we expect any change in the U.S. policy towards Macedonia?
Well, I obviously can't speak for someone who hasn't been elected president of the United States, but I can say the following things. The United States' interests in the world and the challenges we face don't change because we have a presidential election. So we face all those challenges. And over the more than 20 years of our relations with this country, our basic approach through 2 Democrat administrations and 2 Republican administrations has been very, very similar. It is to help Macedonia be part of a Europe whole, free, and at peace as a prosperous, democratic, inclusive society. And that I think remains unchanged. I've served in the Foreign Service for more than 30 years, 16 years under Democrat presidents, 15 years under Republican presidents. And again, what I've experienced is those challenges don't change. So that is what I would expect tonight. We'll find out when the results are in.
Well, there have been ongoing pre-election activities in Macedonia as well.
Sure.
As the U.S. ambassador to the Republic of Macedonia, you have been following the pre-election developments in both countries.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what differences you see in these processes in Macedonia and in the United States?
Well, there are a lot of, well, first of all, there's some basic differences in our form of government, a parliamentary democracy versus really a system of divided government between the legislature and the executive branch. So that creates one thing. Candidates run as individuals who happen to be party members, whereas you have more party lists here in Macedonia. So the mechanics are different. I would say, obviously, the length of the campaign in the United States is, well, very long. It's a big country, and there are big stakes at it. So that's one thing that is very different. A student once asked me here, we've been going around and talking about elections, when does the official campaign begin? And there isn't a moment when the official campaign begins. Candidates will judge whether they need to start running. Some will say the campaign begins the day the previous ballots were counted. Within 2 years, members of Congress will be running, all the members of Congress will be running again.
The midterm elections.
For midterm elections in 2 years from now. So those calculations will start right away. But there's some things, though, that are more fundamental and I think are worth saying. The most important thing is that people vote. This is a right. In my country, we fought a revolution about. Since then, expanding that right to vote has been a major part of our country's history. 100 years ago, many of my colleagues who work with me in the embassy wouldn't have been able to vote. So it's an important thing to do. Your vote does matter. And I would say the same thing here in Macedonia. Remember that election in 2000 when we were down to counting 500 ballots in a few counties in Florida? That determined the election. I saw President Obama at a campaign rally on television the other day, and he said to some students in North Carolina that his ability to win that state in 2008 came down to 2 votes per voting station. That was the difference. So you never know when you're going to be that individual that tilts the election one way or the other. So it's important to get out there and vote. It's important to participate in the process. And I think that's true in my country, and I think that's true in Macedonia.
Ambassador, thank you for this interview and good luck with elections tomorrow.
Thank you very much.